Good evening, dear listeners. As the day winds down and the world outside settles into a hushed calm, I invite you to cozy up and allow yourself to slip into a state of relaxation. Tonight, we embark on a gentle journey through the pages of history, specifically, the serene yet fascinating world of the Roman Senate Scroll Archive Organization Procedures and Papyrus Quality Control Regulations. You may wonder how such seemingly mundane topics could lull you into a restful slumber. Yet, it is often within the quiet details of history that we find the most soothing stories. The meticulous nature of archive procedures, the delicate art of papyrus quality control, and the unwavering dedication of those who preserved the knowledge of the ages offer a tranquil backdrop for our exploration. As we navigate this uneventful history, you will find yourself enveloped in a soft cocoon of information, where the complexities of ancient governance and record-keeping are laid out with gentle clarity. We will begin with an overview of the Roman Senate itself, a body that, while often associated with grand political maneuverings, also had its share of intricate administrative tasks that required patience and precision. Next, we shall delve into the methods employed by the Senate to organize their precious scroll archives. Imagine the scrolls, carefully rolled and tied, each a vessel of wisdom and history. We will explore how these scrolls were categorized, stored, and preserved, ensuring that the thoughts and decisions of illustrious senators remained intact through the ages. Following this, we will meander into the realm of papyrus quality control regulations. Picture the artisans, meticulously crafting sheets of papyrus, ensuring that each one met the high standards set forth by those who valued the written word. We will discuss the criteria they adhered to, the processes they followed, and the reverence they held for their craft. Throughout our journey, I encourage you to allow your mind to drift gently, as if you are gliding on a calm lake at dusk, with each piece of information serving as a ripple that soothes and calms your thoughts. There is no rush. This is a time for unwinding and letting go of the day's concerns. As we approach the heart of our narrative, I invite you to take a deep breath, feeling the air fill your lungs, and then release it slowly, allowing any tension to dissolve away. Let the soothing cadence of my voice cradle you as we begin our exploration into this uneventful yet profoundly interesting slice of history. Now, let us transition into the world of the Roman Senate, where the echoes of ancient voices whisper through the scrolls, patiently waiting to share their stories with us. So, close your eyes, and let the gentle flow of history guide you into a peaceful state of relaxation. The journey begins now. The history of the Roman Senate Scroll Archive Organization Procedures and Papyrus Quality Control Regulations is marked by a profound ambivalence toward the intricacies of bureaucratic management and the preservation of legislative documentation. This account endeavors to delineate the evolution of these procedures from their nascent stages in the Roman Republic, commencing with the establishment of the Senate in 509 BCE, through to the late imperial period, culminating in the codification of procedural standards in the 4th century CE. In the earliest years of the Roman Republic, the Senate, which convened in the Curia Hostilia, a wooden structure located in the Forum Romanum, primarily focused on advisory roles and governance. However, as the Republic expanded, the need for documentation became paramount. Around 300 BCE, the Senate began to formalize its record-keeping practices, recognizing the necessity of archiving its decrees for future reference. The initial organizational efforts were rudimentary, relying heavily on oral tradition and sporadic written accounts. During the late 3rd century BCE, the introduction of papyrus as a writing material, imported from Egypt, revolutionized documentation practices in Rome. Papyrus scrolls, made from the pith of the Papyrus papyrus plant, began to replace earlier materials such as wax tablets and wooden tablets. The Senate, acknowledging the superior durability and ease of transportation offered by papyrus, initiated the Papyrus Quality Control Regulations. These regulations, while not formally codified, established a framework for assessing the quality of papyrus, which included criteria such as texture, thickness, and susceptibility to deterioration. Under the influence of notable figures such as Cato the Elder, 234 to 149 BCE, who championed the importance of written records for maintaining historical accuracy, the Senate adopted a more structured approach to documentation. Cato's writings emphasized the necessity of preserving decrees and laws, which prompted the Senate to appoint a group of scribes, known as the scribi, responsible for transcribing and archiving official documents. The scribes operated primarily out of the tabularium, a repository located adjacent to the Capitoline Hill, which was inaugurated in 78 BCE. This edifice, constructed of travertine and Roman concrete, featured a central hall designed to facilitate the organization and accessibility of scrolls. The procedures for archiving Senate decrees became increasingly formalized around 150 BCE. Scribes were instructed to categorize documents based on subject matter and chronological order, resulting in the establishment of a rudimentary indexing system. The daily routine of the scribes involved the meticulous transcription of proceedings, followed by the careful rolling of scrolls, which were then labeled and stored in designated alcoves within the tabularium. Each scroll was inscribed with a title, the date of issuance, and the names of the senators present during the decree's passage. The quality control of papyrus continued to evolve throughout the 1st century BCE. The Senate implemented specific inspections to assess the quality of incoming papyrus shipments from Alexandria, which was the primary source of papyrus in the Mediterranean region. The inspections were conducted by a designated official known as the Curator Papyrorum, whose responsibilities included verifying the provenance of papyrus and ensuring compliance with quality standards. This position, though not formally recognized in the senatorial hierarchy, became increasingly influential in the governance of archival practices. The transition from the Republic to the imperial period, marked by the rise of Augustus in 27 BCE, brought about further refinements in archival procedures. Augustus, recognizing the importance of a well-organized documentation system for state governance, established the Census and Archive Bureau in 6 CE. This bureau was tasked with overseeing the organization of all official documents, including those pertaining to the Senate, and was located in the newly constructed Forum of Augustus. This architectural marvel, characterized by its grand colonnades and intricately detailed marble facade, served as a fitting backdrop for the bureaucratic machinery of the empire. In the subsequent years, the administrative procedures for archiving Senate documents became increasingly standardized. The daily operations of the Census and Archive Bureau involved the appointment of clerks responsible for maintaining the integrity of the scrolls. These clerks followed strict protocols to ensure that all documents were accurately recorded and preserved. Each day began with the inspection of scrolls, assessing their condition, and identifying any signs of wear or damage. Scrolls found to be in poor condition were subjected to a meticulous repair process, which involved re-rolling and reinforcing the edges with linen strips. The codification of papyrus quality control regulations was formally addressed during the reign of Emperor Claudius, 41 to 54 CE. Claudius, who had a keen interest in improving administrative efficiency, mandated the creation of a comprehensive set of guidelines that outlined the standards for papyrus production and procurement. These regulations stipulated that papyrus must meet specific criteria related to its fibrous composition, moisture content, and resistance to decay. Additionally, the regulations mandated that suppliers of papyrus must undergo a certification process to ensure compliance with the prescribed standards. The architectural innovations of the period also played a significant role in enhancing archival practices. The construction of the Bibliotheca Ulpia, part of the Forum of Trajan completed in 113 CE, provided a dedicated space for the storage and organization of scrolls. This library featured meticulously designed shelves and climate-controlled rooms to safeguard against deterioration caused by humidity and temperature fluctuations. The daily operations of the Bibliotheca Ulpia involved a systematic cataloging process, wherein scrolls were assigned unique identification numbers, further facilitating retrieval and reference. As the empire continued to expand, the variety of documents archived by the Senate grew exponentially. By the 2nd century CE, the Senate was not only archiving legislative decrees but also official correspondences, speeches, and reports from provincial governors. This expansion necessitated the re-evaluation of archival procedures, leading to the establishment of specialized divisions within the Census and Archive Bureau. Each division was tasked with overseeing specific categories of documents, which streamlined the process of retrieval and reference. The administrative procedures instituted during this period included regular audits of the archives to ensure compliance with preservation standards. The archivists conducted thorough inspections, assessing the physical condition of scrolls and the effectiveness of storage methods. Additionally, each scroll was entered into a master ledger, detailing its condition, provenance, and any repairs undertaken. This meticulous record-keeping ensured accountability and facilitated the long-term preservation of the archives. Emperor Aurelian, 270 to 275 CE, further emphasized the importance of documentation when he enacted the Edict on Archival Integrity, in 274 CE. This edict mandated that all Senate documents must be transcribed into a secondary format, such as parchment, to safeguard against the deterioration of papyrus. The use of parchment, derived from animal skins, provided an alternative medium that was less susceptible to environmental factors. The transition to parchment-based documentation, however, was gradual and met with resistance from traditionalists who favored the established use of papyrus. The establishment of the Eastern Roman Empire in the late 4th century CE brought about additional complexities in archival management. As the capital shifted to Constantinople, the need for cohesive organization of Senate documents became increasingly vital. The Senate's archives were divided between the original location in Rome and the new administrative center, leading to a proliferation of duplication and potential inconsistencies in documentation practices. In response to these challenges, Emperor Theodosius II, 408 to 450 CE, initiated the Constitution Concerning Archives, in 425 CE, which sought to unify archival practices across the empire. This constitution mandated the establishment of a centralized repository for all Senate documents in Constantinople, thereby streamlining the organization and preservation of legislative records. The new repository, known as the Magna Tabularium, was constructed using innovative architectural techniques, featuring vaulted ceilings and climate-controlled rooms designed to protect scrolls and parchments from deterioration. The daily operations of the Magna Tabularium involved a rigorous system of checks and balances, wherein archivists were tasked with ensuring compliance with preservation standards while maintaining the integrity of the documentation process. The conclusion of this historical account underscores the significance of the Roman Senate scroll archive organization procedures and papyrus quality control regulations as foundational elements of bureaucratic governance. The evolution of these practices reflects the broader trends in administrative efficiency and the importance placed on documentation in the formation of a cohesive state apparatus. Despite the often monotonous nature of these procedures, they served as vital mechanisms for the preservation of legislative history, ensuring that the actions and decrees of the Roman Senate were systematically recorded and accessible for future generations. The legacy of these archival practices remains a testament to the enduring commitment of the Roman state to the principles of governance, accountability, and historical preservation. The construction methods and materials utilized in the establishment of the Roman Senate Scroll Archive were governed by a series of stringent regulations designed to ensure the long-term preservation of vital documents. Beginning in the early 1st century BCE, the Senate authorized the use of specific types of wood for shelving, prominently featuring cedar and oak as primary materials. The selection of these woods was influenced by their natural resistance to decay and insect infestation, which were significant concerns for the preservation of papyrus scrolls. The shelving units were constructed in dimensions of approximately 1.2 meters in height by 0.75 meters in width, with an average depth of 0.5 meters. Each unit was designed to accommodate scrolls placed horizontally, with a spacing of 5 centimeters between each scroll to facilitate air circulation and prevent the wear caused by friction. The shelves were constructed using mortise and tenon joints, a technique that provided maximum strength and stability, ensuring that the units could support substantial weight without deformation. The maintenance procedures for the archives were methodically outlined in various decrees issued by the Senate. These procedures included biannual inspections, which were first mandated in 27 BCE, to assess the condition of the scrolls and the shelving systems. During these inspections, archivists were required to document any signs of deterioration, such as fraying edges on papyrus or the presence of mold. The mold was addressed using a mixture of vinegar and water, which was applied with a soft cloth to gently cleanse the affected areas. Furthermore, in 14 CE, a regulation was established specifying that all scrolls must be rotated every 3 months. This practice aimed to mitigate the effects of prolonged pressure on individual scrolls and to ensure even exposure to environmental conditions. The archives were maintained at a controlled temperature of approximately 20 degrees Celsius with humidity levels kept between 40 to 60%. These conditions were deemed optimal for the preservation of papyrus, which is known to be sensitive to fluctuations in moisture and temperature. Financial records and costs associated with the Roman Senate Scroll Archive were meticulously recorded and managed by a dedicated team of financial scribes known as the cohort of the finances. This cohort was formed in 43 BCE and was responsible for not only the oversight of expenses related to the archives but also the procurement of materials and payment of personnel. The annual budget for the archive, which varied annually, was typically around 10,000 denarii, a sum that was allocated from the state's treasury. Records from 65 CE indicate that approximately 30% of the budget was dedicated to the purchase of papyrus, which was primarily sourced from Egypt. The average cost of a single roll of papyrus in that period was approximately 2 denarii, allowing for the acquisition of around 1,500 rolls per annum. Additional costs included the maintenance of the archive facilities, which averaged about 3,000 denarii annually, covering expenses such as repairs, security, and utilities. Personnel involved in the operation of the archive were classified into distinct job descriptions, each with specific responsibilities. The chief archivist, or archivarum primus, was the highest-ranking official within the archive and was responsible for overseeing all operations, ensuring compliance with preservation standards, and coordinating with the Senate regarding archival matters. The chief archivist was supported by a team of assistant archivists, known as archivarum secundus, who conducted the day-to-day management of the scrolls, including the organization and indexing of new acquisitions. In addition to archivists, a cadre of scribes was employed to transcribe and copy important documents for preservation. These scribes were required to be proficient in the use of reed pens and ink, which was typically made from soot and water mixed with a binding agent, such as gum arabic. The transcription process was meticulous, as each scribe was trained to produce texts that adhered to the highest standards of legibility and accuracy. The technical specifications for the scrolls themselves were rigorously defined. Each scroll was to be made from papyrus that measured approximately 0.35 meters in width and could extend to a length of 10 meters or more, depending on the content. The writing surface was prepared through a process of flattening and drying the papyrus plant, which was cut into strips and then laid side by side, pressed together, and dried under a heavy weight. Scrolls were typically inscribed in a cursive script known as cursive capitales, characterized by its clear and legible characters. The ink used for writing was required to be dark and durable, with stipulations that it must be resistant to fading, a factor that was carefully monitored by the chief archivist. The standard for ink production included a formula that specified the ratio of carbon black to binding agents, which was often adjusted in response to changes in environmental conditions. The organizational schema for the scrolls was developed to maximize efficiency in retrieval. Initially, in 42 BCE, scrolls were categorized alphabetically, but by 12 CE, This system was modified to include a topical classification, which allowed for the grouping of documents by subject matter. This change significantly improved the accessibility of the archive, as it enabled senators and their aides to locate pertinent documents more swiftly. Furthermore, a comprehensive index of all scrolls was maintained. This index, known as the Index Librorum, was compiled and updated by a team of junior archivists, who were tasked with cataloging newly acquired scrolls. The Index Librorum was organized based on a dual-entry system that included both alphabetical and topical listings, allowing for cross-referencing of documents. The architectural integrity of the archive building itself was also a matter of considerable attention. Constructed in 15 BCE, the structure was designed to be fire-resistant and secure. The walls were built using a combination of bricks and volcanic ash, which provided excellent insulation against external temperatures and potential fires. The roof was constructed with sloped tiles to prevent water accumulation, and the entrance was equipped with heavy wooden doors reinforced with iron. Additionally, security measures included the appointment of a dedicated watchman, who was tasked with monitoring the premises during both daylight and nighttime hours. The watchman was equipped with a simple wooden staff and was required to conduct hourly rounds of the facility, ensuring that the scrolls remained undisturbed. In summary, the history of the Roman Senate Scroll Archive organization procedures and papyrus quality control regulations provides a detailed insight into the meticulous and methodical approaches adopted by the Senate in the preservation of its historical documentation. Through the careful selection of materials, rigorous maintenance protocols, detailed financial management, clearly defined personnel roles, and adherence to technical specifications, the Roman state demonstrated an unparalleled commitment to the preservation of its governance and historical legacy. This unwavering commitment continues to serve as a model for archival practices in subsequent civilizations. The construction methods and materials employed by the Roman Senate in the organization of the scroll archive were characterized by a systematic approach that reflected the architectural ingenuity of the time. The primary materials utilized in the construction of archival facilities included locally sourced limestone, clay bricks, and a variety of timber types, predominantly oak and cedar, which were favored for their durability and resistance to decay. The Senate initiated the first significant construction project dedicated to archival purposes in 63 BCE, resulting in the establishment of the Tabularium, a monumental archive situated at the foot of the Capitoline Hill. This facility spanned approximately 70 meters in length and 40 meters in width, with walls measuring an impressive 3 meters in thickness, ensuring optimal protection for the valuable scrolls housed within. The construction techniques employed in the tabularium included the use of the opus cementitium, or Roman concrete, which was a revolutionary material that allowed for greater structural integrity than the traditional brick and stone methods. The Romans were known to have mixed volcanic ash from the region of Pozzuoli with lime and seawater to create a robust binding agent, which contributed to the longevity of their structures. The vaulting techniques, such as the use of barrel and groin vaults, not only maximized the interior space but also improved the acoustics within the facility, facilitating the reading and discussion of documents. Maintenance procedures for the scroll archive were meticulously outlined and adhered to by a dedicated team of archivists and conservators. Regular inspections were mandated, occurring biannually, during which each scroll was examined for signs of wear, degradation, or pest infestation. A standardized checklist was employed during these inspections, covering aspects such as physical integrity, ink stability, and the presence of mold or other forms of biological growth. Any scroll exhibiting signs of deterioration was subjected to immediate preservation measures, including the application of a specially formulated adhesive made from animal gelatin, which was used to reinforce weakened areas. In terms of environmental control, the Senate implemented strict regulations regarding temperature and humidity levels within the archive. The ideal conditions were maintained at a temperature of approximately 20 degrees Celsius, 68 degrees Fahrenheit, and a relative humidity of 45%. These parameters were monitored using a series of water-filled thermometers and hygrometers, which provided reliable readings of the atmospheric conditions. Furthermore, the establishment of a filtration system, utilizing charcoal and sand, ensured that the air quality remained free from pollutants that could potentially harm the scrolls. Financial records and costs associated with the maintenance of the scroll archive were meticulously documented in the Senate's financial ledgers. A comprehensive accounting system was employed, allowing for detailed tracking of expenditures related to construction, maintenance, and personnel. In 50 BCE, it was recorded that the Senate allocated a budget of 200,000 sesterces specifically for the upkeep of the archive. This budget covered various expenses, including the procurement of high-quality papyrus from Egypt, which was considered the gold standard for the production of scrolls. The Senate's records indicated that a single roll of papyrus, measuring approximately 9 meters in length and 30 centimeters in width, cost around 3 sesterces, while the costs associated with ink and writing instruments, such as reed pens, added an additional 15% to the overall expenditure. The personnel responsible for the management of the scroll archive were organized into a hierarchical structure, with a designated archivarist at the helm. This individual was tasked with overseeing all operations within the archive and ensuring adherence to established protocols. Below the archivarist were several categories of personnel, including scribes, conservators, and assistants. Scribes were responsible for the transcription of documents and the creation of new scrolls, while conservators focused on the preservation and restoration of existing materials. Assistants, often young apprentices, were tasked with various duties, including the organization of scrolls, cleaning of storage areas, and the maintenance of inventory records. Job descriptions for these roles were clearly defined. The archivarist, for instance, was expected to possess a thorough understanding of both the historical significance of the documents and the technical aspects of preservation. A typical archivarist would be required to have at least 10 years of experience in archival work, coupled with formal training in rhetoric and history. Scribes, on the other hand, were required to have exceptional penmanship and an in-depth knowledge of the Latin language, along with the ability to compose documents in a clear and concise manner. Conservators were expected to be familiar with various preservation techniques and materials, as well as possess a keen eye for detail to identify potential issues with the scrolls. Technical specifications for the scroll archive were outlined in the Senate's official documentation, detailing the organizational schema and storage methodologies employed. Scrolls were categorized based on their thematic content, which included sections on legislation, historical accounts, and philosophical treatises. Each category was assigned a specific location within the archive, allowing for efficient retrieval. The scrolls were stored on wooden shelves constructed from durable timber, with each shelf capable of holding approximately 30 scrolls, arranged vertically to minimize damage from prolonged handling. The dimensions of the scrolls themselves adhered to a standardized format, with most measuring approximately 10 to 12 centimeters in width and 5 to 6 meters in length when fully unrolled. The scrolls were rolled onto wooden dowels, which provided structural support and facilitated easier handling. To prevent dust accumulation and biological growth, each scroll was wrapped in a protective cover made from linen or cotton cloth, which was regularly laundered and replaced as necessary. The organization of the scroll archive also included a comprehensive indexing system, which was developed in 45 BCE. This system utilized a series of wax tablets, inscribed with the titles and locations of the scrolls, allowing for efficient cross-referencing. The tablets were arranged in alphabetical order, corresponding to the thematic categories established earlier. Each entry provided a brief description of the scroll's contents, the author, and the date of creation, thus enabling senators and researchers to locate specific documents with minimal delay. In summary, the methods of construction, maintenance procedures, financial records, personnel roles, and technical specifications related to the Roman Senate scroll archive were characterized by an extraordinary level of detail and organization. The commitment to preserving the governance and historical legacy of the Roman state is evident in these procedures, serving not only the needs of the Senate but also creating a framework that would influence subsequent archival practices throughout history. The meticulous nature of these practices ensured that the scrolls remained in excellent condition, allowing for their continued use by generations of scholars and policymakers. This systematic approach to archival organization exemplifies the Roman dedication to knowledge preservation and governance, reflecting a legacy that resonates in archival methodologies even today. The construction methods and materials employed in the establishment of the Roman Senate Scroll Archive were meticulously documented, reflecting the Romans' commitment to durability and functionality. The primary materials used for creating scrolls included papyrus, a plant-based material derived from the Papyrus papyrus plant, which flourished along the Nile River in Egypt. The process of manufacturing papyrus involved cutting the stem of the plant into thin strips, which were then laid side by side and covered with another layer of strips placed at right angles. This assembly was pressed and dried under heavy weights, resulting in a flexible writing surface. The dimensions of the papyrus sheets varied, though a standard size for official scrolls was approximately 30 centimeters in width and could extend to lengths of up to 10 meters, contingent upon the content. The scrolls were then rolled around a wooden dowel, known as an umbilicus, which allowed for easier storage and retrieval. The choice of wood for the umbilicus was predominantly cedar or cypress, selected for their resistance to decay and insect infestation. The maintenance procedures for the scrolls were equally systematic and were primarily governed by the environmental conditions of the storage facilities. The archives of the Roman Senate were often located in well-ventilated rooms, with walls constructed from thick stone to regulate temperature and humidity. These rooms were typically situated in the interior of buildings to protect against the elements. The average temperature maintained in these archives was approximately 18 degrees Celsius, with humidity levels kept between 40% and 60%. These conditions were critical to prevent mold growth and deterioration of the papyrus material. Routine inspections of the scrolls were mandated every 3 months. During these inspections, clerks meticulously examined each scroll for signs of wear, damage, or pest infestation. Any scroll found to be exhibiting signs of deterioration was immediately removed from circulation and subjected to a conservation process that involved cleaning with soft brushes and the application of a thin layer of beeswax to restore flexibility. Detailed records of these inspections were maintained, with entries noting the scroll's condition, date of inspection, and any actions taken. Financial records concerning the acquisition and maintenance of the scrolls were rigorously kept and audited annually. In 45 BCE, for instance, the Roman Senate allocated a budget of 25,000 denarii specifically for the procurement of high-quality papyrus from Egypt. Cost analyses revealed that a single roll of papyrus was priced at approximately 8 denarii, with additional expenses incurred for transportation and storage. The total expenditure for the year also included remuneration for clerks and archivists, who were compensated at a rate of 500 denarii annually. The personnel involved in the management of the Senate Scroll Archive were clearly delineated in their roles and responsibilities, which were codified in the Senate's official records. The chief archivist, known as the archivarus, was responsible for overseeing the entire operation, ensuring that scrolls were properly categorized and maintained. This position was often filled by an individual with a background in law or history, reflecting the importance of the archived materials in governance. Beneath the archivarus were several clerks, typically numbering between 3 and 5, who undertook the day-to-day tasks of cataloging and inspecting scrolls. Their job descriptions included the transcription of new documents, the indexing of existing scrolls, and the maintenance of the archival database, which was kept on wax tablets. These clerks were expected to possess a strong command of Latin and Greek, as many scrolls contained texts in both languages. In addition to clerks, a team of conservators was employed, consisting of 2 to 3 specialists trained in the preservation of papyrus. These individuals were responsible for the application of conservation techniques, as well as the preparation of scrolls for public display during Senate sessions. Their expertise was crucial for ensuring that the scrolls remained in usable condition, as the degradation of papyrus could occur rapidly without proper care. Technical specifications for the Senate Scroll Archive were outlined in a series of documents known as the Archival Codex, which was revised periodically to reflect advancements in archival practices. The Codex specified that scrolls should be stored horizontally on wooden shelves, each shelf fitted with a brass rod to allow for easy access. The dimensions of these shelves were standardized at 2 meters in length and 1 meter in height, with a depth of 30 centimeters, accommodating up to 50 scrolls per shelf. The organization of the scrolls within the archive was dictated by a systematic classification system based on subject matter. The primary categories included legislation, historical accounts, and philosophical treatises. Each category was further subdivided into subcategories, allowing for granular organization that facilitated efficient retrieval. For instance, legislation was classified chronologically, while historical accounts were organized by author and date of composition. To ensure the integrity of the archive, strict protocols were established for the retrieval and return of scrolls. A detailed log was maintained, recording the name of the individual requesting a scroll, the date and time of the request, and the specific scrolls issued. Upon return, the scrolls were re-inspected for any signs of damage, and any necessary conservation measures were implemented. In 27 BCE, a significant reform was enacted to enhance the accessibility of the scrolls to senators and other authorized personnel. This reform involved the introduction of a public reading area within the archive, equipped with wooden tables and benches for scholars and legislators. The area was furnished with oil lamps to provide adequate lighting for reading, with a total of 12 lamps installed in the space, illuminating an area of approximately 50 square meters. The Senate Scroll Archive also employed a rudimentary early version of a cross-referencing system, which utilized wax tablets to maintain a record of scroll locations. Each scroll was assigned a unique identifier, which was inscribed on a corresponding wax tablet. This tablet was then affixed to the shelf on which the scroll was stored, allowing clerks to quickly locate scrolls without the need to remove each one from the shelf. In terms of technological advancements, the Romans employed a range of tools to facilitate the work of the archivists. A notable invention was the stylus, a pointed instrument used for writing on wax tablets. The use of a stylus allowed for quick notations and corrections, which were essential for maintaining accurate records in a bustling archive. The average length of these styluses was around 15 centimeters, crafted from materials such as metal or bone. The integration of these organizational practices and technical specifications exemplifies the Roman Senate's commitment to the efficient management of its scroll archive. The procedures established during this period laid the groundwork for modern archival practices, showcasing a level of foresight and dedication to knowledge preservation that continues to influence archival methodologies today. In summary, the construction methods and materials used in the Roman Senate Scroll Archive, alongside the meticulous maintenance procedures, well-documented financial records, clearly defined personnel roles, and established technical specifications, all contributed to an archival system that was both robust and functional. The legacy of these practices underscores the importance of systematic organization in the preservation of knowledge and governance, providing a model that resonates through the ages. The construction methods and materials employed in the assembly of the scroll archive of the Roman Senate were dictated by the prevailing standards of the time, which prioritized durability, accessibility, and uniformity. The scrolls, primarily constructed from papyrus, were produced from the pith of the Cyperus papyrus plant, which was cultivated extensively along the Nile River in Egypt. The papyrus was harvested, cut into strips, and then laid out in overlapping layers, which were pressed together and dried under the sun. The standard dimensions of a single papyrus sheet were approximately 25 centimeters in width and 30 centimeters in length, although variations existed depending on the specific needs of the scroll. The scrolls were typically rolled around a wooden dowel, which served both as a support and a means of protection. The dowels were crafted from locally sourced wood, with cedar and oak being the most common materials. The typical length of these dowels was around 30 centimeters, with a diameter of approximately 2 centimeters. This standardization facilitated uniformity in storage and handling practices. In terms of maintenance procedures, the Roman Senate established rigorous protocols to ensure the longevity of its scroll collections. Regular inspections were mandated, occurring biannually during the months of January and July. These inspections involved a thorough examination of each scroll for signs of deterioration, such as fading ink, brittleness of the papyrus, or damage from pests. Specialized personnel, referred to as archivarii, were tasked with this responsibility. The archivarii were expected to document their findings in a ledger, noting the condition of each scroll, the date of inspection, and any remedial actions taken. Remedial actions included the application of a mixture of beeswax and resin, which was used to coat the surface of the papyrus, providing a protective layer against environmental factors. This mixture was prepared with a precise ratio of 3:1 beeswax to resin, which was deemed optimal for preservation without compromising the readability of the text. In cases where scrolls exhibited severe damage, a more intricate restoration process was employed, involving the use of linen strips to reinforce the papyrus. This procedure required the careful alignment of the scroll's fibers and took an average of 3 to 5 days to complete, depending on the severity of the damage. Financial records related to the construction and maintenance of the scroll archive were meticulously kept, reflecting a comprehensive accounting of expenses incurred. The Senate allocated a budget for papyrus procurement, which was typically set at 10,000 sesterces per annum, with a slight increase to 12,000 sesterces during years of expanded documentation needs, such as during significant political events or reforms. The costs associated with labor, including the salaries of the archivarii, were also documented, with each archivarius receiving an annual stipend of 1,200 sesterces. In addition to direct expenses, the financial records included costs related to transportation, as papyrus was often imported from Egypt via maritime trade routes. The average cost of shipping was calculated at approximately 5% of the total value of the papyrus acquired, which necessitated careful budgeting and planning by the Senate's financial officers. The meticulous documentation of these expenses provided a clear picture of the financial health of the Senate's archival operations and was reviewed quarterly. The personnel involved in the scroll archive operations were categorized into distinct roles, each with specific job descriptions. The archivarii, as previously mentioned, were primarily responsible for the inspection and maintenance of the scrolls. A typical team consisted of 5 archivarii, each overseeing a portion of the collection, which was divided based on subject matter, legal documents, historical records, and administrative correspondence. Additionally, there was a position known as the custos tabularum, who served as the chief custodian of the scroll archive. This individual was responsible for overall management and coordination of the archivarii, ensuring that all procedures were followed correctly and that the collection remained accessible to authorized personnel. The custos tabularum received an annual salary of 1,800 sesterces, reflecting the elevated level of responsibility associated with the role. Supporting the archivarii in custos tabularum were the scribi, or scribes, who were tasked with the copying of important documents and the creation of new scrolls as needed. They were skilled in the use of reed pens and ink made from carbon black mixed with water and gum arabic. The average scribe produced approximately 2 to 3 scrolls per week, with an estimated labor cost of 500 sesterces per scroll, factoring in the time spent on writing, copying, and final inspections. Technical specifications for the scrolls themselves were also established, which included guidelines on ink composition, writing styles, and formatting. The ink used for writing was required to have a viscosity that allowed for easy application without smudging, with a recommended density of 1.25 grams per cubic centimeter. The writing style mandated was the capitalis monumentalis, characterized by its clear, bold lettering, which was deemed essential for readability, particularly in public records. In terms of formatting, scrolls were to be composed with a margin of no less than 2 centimeters on the left side to allow for easy rolling and unrolling. Lines of text were to be spaced a minimum of 1 centimeter apart, facilitating legibility. Each scroll was also required to have a title inscribed at the top, along with the date of creation, which allowed for easier identification during inspections. The organization of the scrolls within the archive was governed by a systematic approach, with documents catalogued by subject matter and chronological order. A comprehensive index was maintained, detailing the contents of each scroll, along with its physical location within the archive. The index was updated regularly, with entries added as new scrolls were created or existing scrolls were modified. In conclusion, the construction methods, maintenance procedures, financial records, personnel, and technical specifications surrounding the Roman Senate scroll archive organization were characterized by a meticulous attention to detail. The practices established during this period reflect a commitment to the preservation of knowledge and governance, ensuring that the wisdom of the past would remain accessible for future generations. The legacy of these procedures serves as a testament to the importance of systematic organization in the realm of historical documentation, offering insights into the operational standards of one of history's most influential governing bodies. The construction methods and materials employed in the assembly of the scroll archive of the Roman Senate were dictated by the prevailing standards of the time, which prioritized durability, accessibility, and uniformity. This systematic approach was particularly crucial in a society where record-keeping was essential for governance, law, and historical documentation. The scrolls, primarily constructed from papyrus, were produced from the pith of the Cyperus papyrus plant, which was cultivated extensively along the Nile River in Egypt. The papyrus plant has a long history, with its use dating back to at least 3000 BCE. By the time of the Roman Republic, around 509 BCE, the Egyptians had mastered the process of converting this plant into a writing medium. The papyrus was harvested, cut into strips, and then laid out in overlapping layers, which were pressed together to form sheets. The process involved soaking the strips in water, which helped to facilitate the adhesion of the fibers. After drying under pressure, the sheets were polished with a tool made from a smooth stone or shell, enhancing their writing surface. By the late Republic, particularly around 100 BCE, the Romans began to adopt this Egyptian innovation for their own administrative and literary needs. The scrolls were typically around 30 centimeters wide and could be several meters long, depending on the amount of text. Each scroll contained a specific number of sheets. For instance, a typical scroll might include 10 to 20 sheets, depending on the density of the writing and the importance of the contents. In addition to papyrus, other materials such as parchment, made from animal skins, began to gain popularity in the later periods of the Roman Empire. Parchment was favored for its durability and ability to withstand the rigors of frequent handling. The production of parchment was a meticulous process. The skins were soaked in lime, scraped to remove hair and flesh, stretched on frames, and dried. This method, perfected by the 2nd century BCE, allowed for a smoother writing surface and the potential for more elaborate manuscripts. One notable case study is the famous Library of Alexandria, established in the 3rd century BCE, which served as a model for Roman archives. The library was renowned for its extensive collection of scrolls and texts, many of which were copied from other cultures, including Greek and Babylonian works. The methods employed in the library's construction and maintenance of its scrolls emphasized preservation and accessibility, with scrolls stored in wooden cabinets and labeled for easy retrieval, a practice that would influence later Roman approaches to library organization. The Roman Senate's own archives, particularly around 27 BCE when Augustus restructured the administration, saw significant improvements in the methods of record-keeping. This period marked a shift toward more systematic documentation of proceedings, with an emphasis on preserving the Senate's deliberations and decisions. The archives were housed in the tabularium, built on the Capitoline Hill, which became the official record-keeping center. The structure itself was designed with durability in mind, utilizing stone and brick to withstand the test of time. The creation of an organized archive involved meticulous processes, including not just the physical assembly of scrolls but also the classification of documents. Senators and scribes employed a standard system for categorizing scrolls, often denoting their contents with labels written in ink made from soot and tree resins. Such ink, known as atramentum, was favored for its longevity and resistance to fading. In terms of measurements, the ink was typically applied with a stylus or reed pen, producing characters that varied in size but were often around 1 to 2 centimeters in height for legibility. This attention to detail in writing reflected the Roman values of clarity and precision in governance. Historically, the significance of scroll archives cannot be understated. They served not only as legal documents but also as a record of cultural identity and heritage. As Rome transitioned from republic to empire, the methods and materials used in documentation evolved, reflecting broader changes in governance, society, and technology. By the time of the late Empire, around the 4th century CE, the introduction of codex, the precursor to the modern book, began to alter the landscape of documentation, leading to a decline in the use of scrolls. In conclusion, the assembly of the Roman Senate scroll archive was a reflection of the technological advancements and cultural practices of the time, illustrating a deep commitment to preserving history and governance through meticulous construction methods and materials. The uneventful history of Roman Senate scroll archive organization procedures and papyrus quality control regulations, continued. Part 6, Regional Variations and Comparisons. The organization of the Roman Senate scroll archive was not a monolithic entity but rather a complex and multifaceted system that displayed considerable regional variations. These differences were shaped by local administrative practices, cultural influences, and the availability of materials. For instance, the practices in the provinces of Gaul often diverged from those in the heart of Rome, a reflection of the socio-political landscape unique to each region. In the provinces, particularly in Gaul, there was a notable predilection for the use of bark paper made from local trees, which was often employed in tandem with the more traditional papyrus. The availability of raw materials dictated the methods of record keeping. Consequently, the quality of documents produced in these regions could vary dramatically. While Gaul's bark paper was somewhat more durable than degraded papyrus, it was also subject to environmental degradation if not stored properly. This necessitated additional bureaucratic oversight in the archiving processes, as local officials were tasked with ensuring that records did not suffer from mold or decay, a common affliction in the damp climates of northern provinces. Conversely, in the southern provinces, such as Egypt, the quality of papyrus was often superior due to the abundant and well-maintained papyrus reeds of the Nile Delta. The Egyptians had established a robust system of papyrus cultivation and processing, leading to scrolls that were not only more durable but also more aesthetically pleasing. The Roman Senate often received shipments of these high-quality papyrus scrolls, which were preferred for important legislative documents and decrees. This regional variation in papyrus quality led to a hierarchical system of documentation, where the prestige of a scroll was often determined by its place of origin, thus influencing the perception of the records contained therein. Moreover, the organization of the scroll archives in Rome itself underwent significant adaptation to accommodate these regional variations. The central archive in the Curia was meticulously structured to integrate records from various provinces, necessitating a standardized cataloging system. This system aimed to unify the diverse practices of record-keeping and to ensure that documents from all regions were accessible and comprehensible, despite their differing qualities. Part 7: Evolution over different time periods. The evolution of the Roman Senate scroll archive organization procedures can be traced through several distinct periods, each marked by significant administrative reforms and shifts in societal priorities. During the early Republic, the archives were relatively informal, relying heavily on oral tradition and rudimentary written records. The Senate's reliance on the memory of seasoned senators resulted in inconsistent documentation practices, leading to numerous gaps in the historical record. As Rome transitioned into the late Republic and the early Empire, a more structured approach to archiving was adopted. The introduction of the tabularium, a dedicated space for storing state documents, marked a significant turning point. The tabularium facilitated not only the physical organization of scrolls but also the establishment of formal protocols for their maintenance and retrieval. This period saw the emergence of specialized roles within the bureaucratic structure, such as the praefectus tabularii, who was responsible for the oversight of both scroll preservation and the quality control of papyrus. By the time of the Flavian dynasty, the Roman Senate had implemented stringent regulations regarding the quality of papyrus used for official documentation. These regulations were informed by past experiences with inferior materials, which had resulted in lost records and administrative chaos. The lack of standardization had previously allowed for discrepancies in the quality of scrolls, prompting the Senate to establish a centralized system for approving suppliers of papyrus. As a result, the interaction between suppliers and governmental bodies became increasingly bureaucratic, involving detailed contracts and stipulations regarding the acceptable quality of materials. In the later years of the empire, particularly during the Severan dynasty, the organization of the scroll archives took on a more complex character, reflecting the growing demands of an expansive empire. The introduction of more advanced record-keeping technologies, such as wax tablets for temporary records, complemented the traditional scrolls and allowed for a more dynamic approach to documentation. This period also saw an emphasis on the preservation of legal documents, as the Senate sought to codify laws and regulations in a manner that would endure through time. Part 8: Bureaucratic Regulations and Laws. The bureaucratic regulations governing the organization of the Roman Senate scroll archives were extensive and intricate, reflecting the complexities of governance in a sprawling empire. The fundamental laws pertaining to the management of scroll archives can be traced back to the Lex Aelia Sentia, passed in 4 BCE, which mandated the proper recording of legal proceedings and decrees. This legislation was pivotal in formalizing the role of the archives as a repository for state documents, establishing the expectation that the Senate would maintain meticulous records of its proceedings. Subsequent laws further delineated the responsibilities of various officials within the archiving system. For example, the Lex Julia Divii Publica, enacted during the reign of Augustus, imposed strict penalties for the destruction or alteration of official records. This law underscored the importance of preserving the integrity of the archives, as tampering with documents could lead to significant political ramifications. The penalties outlined included fines and potential exile, reflecting the seriousness with which the Senate regarded the preservation of its historical narrative. Additionally, the regulations stipulated detailed procedures for the labeling and storage of scrolls. Each scroll was required to carry a label indicating its content, the date of creation, and the name of the author or responsible senator. These labels were often inscribed in a standardized format to ensure consistency across the archives. The meticulous attention to detail in labeling was a critical factor in facilitating the retrieval of specific documents, particularly as the volume of scrolls grew exponentially over time. The regulations also encompassed the treatment of non-papyrus materials. For instance, the use of wax tablets for temporary records was governed by specific rules, which mandated that these tablets be updated regularly and that obsolete entries be meticulously marked or obliterated. This level of detail in regulation extended to the physical conditions of storage, requiring that archives be maintained in temperature-controlled environments to prevent degradation of the materials. Part 9: Supply Chain and Logistics. The logistics of supplying the Roman Senate with high-quality papyrus and maintaining the scroll archives were an elaborate web of interconnected systems. The supply chain for papyrus began with the cultivation of the papyrus plant, which was primarily harvested in the Nile Delta. Egyptian merchants played a pivotal role in this supply chain, negotiating contracts with Roman officials to provide papyrus of specific quality and dimensions. Once harvested, the papyrus was processed and dried, a meticulous procedure that required careful handling to prevent spoilage. The processed papyrus was then rolled into scrolls and bundled for transport. The journey from Egypt to Rome was fraught with challenges, including the potential for damage during transit and the risk of piracy along maritime routes. Thus, Roman officials often implemented stringent inspection protocols upon receipt of shipments, ensuring that only the finest quality papyrus reached the Senate. The logistical challenges extended beyond the procurement of materials. The organization of the tabularium itself required careful planning and resource allocation. Scrolls were categorized not only by subject matter but also by the frequency of use, with more commonly referenced documents placed in easily accessible areas. The use of wooden shelving, which was often lacquered to prevent deterioration, was a common practice that enhanced both the aesthetic quality and durability of the archive. Furthermore, the transportation of scrolls within the city of Rome posed its own set of logistical challenges. The Senate employed a cadre of scribes and clerks whose responsibilities included the delivery of documents to various government officials and the archiving of newly created records. This necessitated a well-coordinated system of routes and timelines to ensure the timely delivery of documents, a task made all the more complicated by the often congested urban environment of ancient Rome. Part 10: Record-Keeping Methods. The methods of record-keeping employed by the Roman Senate were diverse and evolved over time, adapting to the changing needs of administration. In the earliest days of the Republic, record-keeping relied heavily on oral tradition, supplemented by rudimentary written records inscribed on stone and metal. However, as the Senate's responsibilities expanded, so too did the complexity of its record-keeping methods. The introduction of the scroll as a primary medium for documentation marked a significant advancement in record-keeping. Scrolls allowed for the detailed recording of legislative proceedings, treaties, and decrees, with each scroll typically containing a singular subject matter. This focused approach facilitated easier navigation through the archives, although it did result in a proliferation of scrolls that required meticulous organization. Scribes played a crucial role in the record-keeping process, often copying documents by hand with great attention to detail. The training of a scribe was rigorous, emphasizing the importance of legibility and accuracy. As such, the position of a scribe was highly respected, with skilled scribes often commanding high wages and enjoying certain privileges within the bureaucratic hierarchy. In addition to the scrolls, the Roman Senate employed wax tablets for short-term records and communications. These tablets allowed for quick note-taking and flexibility, as entries could be amended or erased as necessary. However, the transient nature of wax tablets meant that they were not suitable for the permanent documentation of legislative acts. As the empire progressed into the later stages of the Senate's history, the advent of public notaries further refined the record-keeping process. Notaries were tasked with the official recording of legal transactions and decrees, providing a level of authentication that was increasingly demanded by the complexities of Roman law. The documentation produced by notaries would later be archived alongside the traditional scrolls, creating a comprehensive record of the Senate's activities. In conclusion, The History of the Roman Senate Scroll Archive Organization Procedures and Papyrus Quality Control Regulations reflects a sophisticated interplay of regional variations, evolving legislative frameworks, and the bureaucratic necessities of governance. While the minutiae of these practices may appear tedious and mundane, they reveal the underlying complexities of an institution that was foundational to the development of Western bureaucratic systems. Each scroll, each regulation, and each logistical challenge contributed to the rich tapestry of Roman history, encapsulated in the quiet, methodical organization of its archives. The Uneventful History of Roman Senate Scroll Archive Organization Procedures and Papyrus Quality Control Regulations. Part 7, Regional Variations and Comparisons. The organizational procedures and quality control regulations of the Roman Senate Scroll Archive were not monolithic but rather exhibited a fascinating tapestry of regional variations that reflected the diverse administrative cultures across the vast expanse of the Roman Empire. The core operational principles established in Rome, particularly during the late Republic and into the early Empire, underwent numerous adaptations in response to local governance styles, climatic conditions, and even the availability of raw materials for papyrus production. In the provinces of Egypt, for instance, where papyrus was cultivated extensively along the fertile banks of the Nile, the Senate's archival procedures were heavily influenced by the local administrative practices inherited from the Ptolemaic dynasty. Egyptian officials were known for their meticulous record-keeping, which emphasized the importance of chronological order and the systematic categorization of documents. The Senate archives in Alexandria, therefore, adopted a more refined approach to scroll organization, often employing a dual indexing system that paired thematic cataloging with a chronological timeline. This resulted in a heightened sensitivity to the historical context of each scroll, thus allowing for easier retrieval and cross-referencing. Contrastingly, in the western provinces, such as Gaul and Hispania, the procedures tended to be less standardized, reflecting the relatively emergent bureaucratic structures in these regions. Here, the Senate scroll archives often operated under a more ad hoc organizational structure. Local magistrates, often influenced by Gallic tribal customs, would prioritize practical usage over theoretical classification. As a result, scrolls were frequently stored in large wicker baskets labeled with simple symbols representing the contents, a practice that was both efficient and easily understandable by local clerks, many of whom were less formally educated in the nuances of Roman administrative practices. The regional variations were not merely cosmetic. They had profound implications for the dissemination of information and the efficacy of governance across the empire. For example, while the Alexandrian system allowed for the swift retrieval of legal precedents, the Gaulish system often resulted in delays and miscommunications, particularly in situations requiring urgent legislative action. Part 8, Evolution over different time periods. The evolution of the Roman Senate's archival procedures and papyrus quality control regulations can be traced through several significant historical epochs, each marked by distinct shifts in political and social paradigms. The early Republic, from approximately 509 to 27 BCE, witnessed a nascent form of record-keeping that primarily revolved around public decrees and financial transactions. During this period, the Senate maintained a rudimentary system that involved the use of wax tablets for drafting decisions, which were later transcribed onto papyrus for formal archival purposes. As the Republic transitioned into the imperial era, particularly during the reign of Augustus, the need for a more sophisticated archival system became apparent. The burgeoning bureaucracy and the expansion of the empire necessitated a re-evaluation of existing procedures. The introduction of the cursus publicus, the state-run courier and transportation service, allowed for more efficient dissemination of scrolls across vast distances. Consequently, the quality control regulations surrounding papyrus began to evolve, emphasizing not only the physical integrity of the scrolls but also the accuracy of their content. By the time of the Severan dynasty, 193 to 235 CE, the archival procedures had undergone a significant transformation. The Senate began to implement a series of bureaucratic regulations that mandated the use of standardized parchment for high-value documents, particularly those of legal and political significance. This marked a departure from the traditional reliance on papyrus, which was deemed susceptible to deterioration in the humid climates of many provinces. The Senate also instituted rigorous inspections of incoming scrolls, ensuring that only documents meeting specific criteria for clarity, legibility, and physical condition were accepted into the archives. Part 9: Bureaucratic Regulations and Laws. The bureaucratic regulations governing the Senate Scroll Archive were intricate and, at times, labyrinthine in their detail. The regulations were codified in a series of decrees, often referred to collectively as the Lex Archivarum, which outlined the responsibilities of archivists, the criteria for scroll acceptance, and the procedures for maintaining the quality of both the scrolls and the archive environment itself. One notable regulation mandated that all scrolls submitted for archival purposes must be accompanied by a tabulae indices, a summary index that provided a concise description of the scroll's content, author, and date of creation. This summary was to be inscribed on a separate sheet of parchment and affixed to the exterior of the scroll's protective casing, facilitating quick identification and retrieval. The tabulae indices also served as a form of quality assurance, allowing archivists to gauge the relevance of the document to existing collections. Furthermore, the regulations stipulated strict penalties for violations of archival procedures. Archivists found negligent in their duties could face fines, demotion, or even exile, while those who submitted fraudulent or improperly categorized scrolls risked severe legal repercussions. The Senate took these regulations seriously, as the integrity of the archival system was seen as vital to the maintenance of order and continuity in governance. Part 10: Supply Chain and Logistics. The supply chain and logistics associated with the production, transportation, and archival of scrolls were complex systems that required meticulous planning and coordination. The primary raw material for scrolls, papyrus, was cultivated predominantly in the Nile Delta, and its procurement was a significant logistical endeavor. Once harvested, the papyrus stalks underwent a labor-intensive process of drying, flattening, and cutting into sheets, which were then bundled and shipped to various provincial centers. The Senate established contracts with local producers in Egypt, ensuring a steady supply of high-quality papyrus. These contracts often included stipulations regarding the thickness, texture, and lack of imperfections in the papyrus sheets, as these factors directly impacted the usability of the scrolls. The Senate also maintained a network of transport routes, utilizing both land and maritime channels to facilitate the movement of papyrus to Rome and other provincial archives. Once in Rome, the papyrus was stored in designated warehouses, where it was carefully monitored for humidity and temperature, both of which could adversely affect the quality of the material. The papyrus was then distributed to scribes and archivists, who were responsible for transcribing documents and maintaining the scrolls. This distribution system was critical, as it allowed for the centralized management of resources while ensuring that the archives were continually replenished with fresh documentation. Part 11. Record-keeping methods. The methods employed for record-keeping within the Senate Scroll Archive were a synthesis of ancient practices and evolving technologies. Initially, the primary method of documentation involved the use of wax tablets for drafts and notes, which were easily erasable and reusable. However, this practice was eventually supplanted by the adoption of more permanent forms of record-keeping with the increasing importance of preserving historical accuracy. The transition to papyrus scrolls marked a significant evolution in record-keeping methods. Scribes, often trained in the art of calligraphy, would meticulously inscribe documents onto the sheets of papyrus, employing ink made from natural materials such as carbon black and gum arabic. The precision and artistry of this work were paramount, as the legibility and aesthetic quality of the scrolls reflected the importance of the documents contained within. In terms of organization, the scrolls were typically stored in wooden or clay tubes, which allowed for protection against environmental damage and facilitated easy handling. Each tube would be labeled with the title of the scroll, and archivists employed a form of cross-referencing, creating supplementary indices that categorized scrolls by subject matter, date, and author. This method ensured that even as the volume of documentation increased, the ability to locate specific scrolls remained efficient. In summary, the history of the Roman Senate Scroll Archive organization procedures and papyrus quality control regulations is a testament to the complexities inherent in bureaucratic systems. From regional variations and their comparative analysis to the evolution of methods over time, the intricate web of regulations, logistics, and record-keeping strategies encapsulates the mundane yet critical aspects of governance in one of history's most influential civilizations. The meticulous attention to detail, while perhaps tedious, underscores the importance of preserving knowledge and ensuring the continuity of administrative function throughout the ages. The uneventful history of Roman Senate Scroll Archive organization procedures and papyrus quality control regulations has been a subject of considerable yet often overlooked academic inquiry. As we delve into the intricate details of this underappreciated domain, our focus will now shift toward regional variations and comparisons, the evolution over different time periods, bureaucratic regulations and laws, supply chain and logistics, and record-keeping methods. Each of these aspects contributes significantly to the overarching narrative of the Senate's papyrus-centric bureaucratic operations. Regional variations and comparisons. The Roman Empire, expansive in its geographical reach, exhibited notable regional variations in its approaches to scroll archive organization and papyrus quality control. In provinces such as Egypt, where papyrus was cultivated in abundance along the Nile, the quality of the raw material was often superior due to the region's climate and the expertise of local artisans. Here, the meticulous selection process for papyrus involved inspecting the thickness, texture, and color of the sheets, with a preference for those exhibiting a smooth, creamy surface free from blemishes. Such high-quality papyrus facilitated the production of durable scrolls that could withstand the passage of time, ideally suited for legislative records. Conversely, in regions farther from the Nile, such as Gaul and Hispania, the availability of quality papyrus was less reliable. In these provinces, the Senate archives were often compelled to rely on inferior substitutes, such as parchment made from animal skins. While parchment offered some advantages in terms of durability and resistance to moisture, it lacked the smooth writing surface that papyrus provided, often resulting in less legible inscriptions. This led to a disparity in the preservation of records across the empire. Scrolls from Egypt were more likely to survive intact, while those from the western provinces displayed signs of wear and degradation more rapidly. Furthermore, the local administrative practices influenced the organization of scroll archives. In regions where centralized authority was more pronounced, such as Rome itself, the Senate employed strict guidelines for the categorization and storage of scrolls. In contrast, provincial governors often adopted more flexible methods tailored to their specific needs, which could result in a less uniform approach to record-keeping. For instance, the archives in the province of Asia Minor frequently contained a haphazard assortment of documents, lacking the systematic organization seen in the heart of the empire. This regional inconsistency in archival practices reflects the broader cultural and administrative diversity within the Roman Empire. Evolution over different time periods. As the Roman Senate evolved through various political and social upheavals, so too did its scroll archive organization procedures and papyrus quality control regulations. The early Republic, characterized by a relatively informal approach to record-keeping, saw the establishment of foundational practices that would later be codified into more rigorous standards. During this period, scrolls primarily recorded legislative decisions and decrees, with little emphasis on the quality of the papyrus used. However, as the Senate's role became more prominent during the late Republic and into the imperial period, especially under Augustus, the need for formalized archiving procedures became apparent. The transition from scrolls to codex formats also began during this time, further necessitating an evolution in record-keeping practices. The codex, which allowed for the compilation of multiple texts within a single volume, presented new challenges in terms of organization and preservation. This shift prompted the Senate to invest in the training of scribes who were tasked with ensuring the quality of the papyrus used in these new formats, as well as establishing standardized methods for binding and storing the codices. The establishment of a formalized bureaucracy during the early imperial period brought about the introduction of comprehensive regulations governing both the production and preservation of papyrus. This included the implementation of quality control measures that mandated the inspection of papyrus sheets prior to their use in Senate documentation. Such measures were detailed in various edicts issued by the emperor, which outlined the acceptable standards for papyrus quality and the procedures for rejecting subpar materials. Bureaucratic regulations and laws. The bureaucratic nature of the Roman Senate necessitated an extensive framework of regulations and laws governing scroll archive organization and papyrus quality control. The Lex Papyratia, a pivotal piece of legislation passed during the reign of Emperor Tiberius, codified the standards for papyrus quality and established penalties for noncompliance. This law mandated that all papyrus used in official documents must meet specific criteria: a minimum thickness of 0.5 mm, uniform coloration, and an absence of tears or other imperfections. In addition to the Lex Papyratia, various other laws emerged to govern the conduct of archivists and scribes. For instance, the Lex Scriba required that all scribes undergo a certification process, ensuring that they possessed the requisite skills and knowledge to produce documents that adhered to the established quality standards. This certification process included rigorous examinations on the proper techniques for inscribing text on papyrus, as well as the appropriate methods for maintaining and organizing scroll archives. Moreover, the Senate established a dedicated oversight committee, known as the Curators Papyrorum, responsible for monitoring compliance with these regulations. This committee conducted periodic inspections of archives across the empire, assessing the quality of papyrus used in official documents and the organization of scrolls. Reports generated by the Curators Papyrorum provided valuable insights into the overall health of the Senate's archival practices and often resulted in the implementation of corrective measures in regions where standards were found lacking. Supply chain and logistics. The logistics involved in acquiring papyrus and managing the supply chain were critical components of the Senate's archival procedures. The production of papyrus was concentrated in specific geographic areas, primarily along the Nile in Egypt, which necessitated the establishment of a complex network of trade routes for the transportation of this vital resource. The Senate maintained close relationships with local producers, ensuring a steady flow of quality papyrus into Rome. The logistics of papyrus procurement included the establishment of contracts with suppliers that specified the quantity, quality, and delivery timelines for papyrus shipments. The Senate's purchasing agents were tasked with negotiating these contracts, often traveling to Egypt to oversee the harvesting and processing of the papyrus plants. During peak seasons, when the papyrus was harvested, the Senate's agents would coordinate shipping logistics, utilizing the extensive network of Roman roads and waterways to transport the finished product back to Rome. Once the papyrus arrived at the Senate archives, it underwent an additional layer of quality control. This involved a meticulous inspection process, during which archivists would evaluate each batch of papyrus against the standards set forth in the Lex Papyratia. Should any deficiencies be found, the affected materials would be returned to the suppliers, often resulting in lengthy disputes over quality claims. Such logistical challenges, while seemingly mundane, had a considerable impact on the overall efficiency of the Senate's archival operations. Record-keeping methods. The methods employed for record-keeping within the Senate's archives were diverse and evolved over time, reflecting the changing needs of the institution. Initially, documents were recorded on scrolls, which were rolled up and stored in wooden or clay containers. This method, while functional, presented challenges in terms of accessibility and retrieval. As the demand for more efficient record-keeping solutions grew, the Senate began to explore alternative methods, including the use of wax tablets for temporary documentation. Wax tablets, while not suitable for long-term preservation, allowed for quicker note-taking and draft preparations. Scribes would inscribe text onto the wax surface using a stylus, and these documents could be easily erased and reused. This practice was particularly beneficial for the Senate's daily operations, where rapid communication was essential. However, once documents were finalized, they would ultimately be transcribed onto more durable papyrus scrolls for preservation. The introduction of the codex format further revolutionized record-keeping methods. Codices, which combined multiple pages of papyrus bound together, allowed for more straightforward navigation and access to information. This shift necessitated a re-evaluation of archiving practices, as archivists needed to develop new organizational systems for these multi-page documents. The implementation of thematic categorization, such as legislative records, decrees, and personal correspondence, became increasingly important as the volume of documents grew. In conclusion, the history of the Roman Senate scroll archive organization procedures and papyrus quality control regulations is a tapestry woven with intricate details and nuanced developments. Regional variations, evolving practices, stringent bureaucratic regulations, complex supply chains, and innovative record-keeping methods all played critical roles in shaping the Senate's archival landscape. While these topics may seem tedious and mundane, they represent the backbone of an institution that relied heavily on the written word to govern and maintain the vast Roman Empire. Ultimately, the careful attention to detail in these processes ensured that the Senate's records would endure the test of time, allowing future generations to glean insights into the governance of one of history's most influential civilizations. The uneventful history of Roman Senate scroll archive organization procedures and papyrus quality control regulations. Part 9. Regional variations and comparisons. As we delve into the regional variations and comparisons of scroll archive organization procedures and papyrus quality control regulations within the Roman Senate, it is imperative to recognize the profound impact of geographical diversity on bureaucratic practices. The vast expanse of the Roman Empire encompassed myriad cultures, climates, and logistical challenges that shaped local methodologies in document preservation and administrative governance. In the provinces of Africa, for instance, papyrus was often of superior quality due to the favorable climate for its cultivation along the Nile River. Consequently, the archival practices in this region were characterized by meticulous attention to the preservation of documents, as evidenced by the use of specialized storage techniques involving humidity control. The scrolls were frequently treated with olive oil to enhance their durability, a method that was less common in the cooler climates of Gaul or Britannia, where parchment made from animal skins became a more prevalent medium. Contrastingly, in the provinces of Gallia, the availability of high-quality papyrus was scarce due to the region's distance from major production centers. As a result, records were often transcribed onto coarse parchment, which necessitated a completely different approach to storage and maintenance. The French regions utilized wooden scroll cases lined with linen to protect their documents from the dampness that plagued many parts of northern Europe, demonstrating an innovative adaptation to local environmental conditions. Moreover, The Senate's practices in the eastern provinces, particularly in Asia Minor and the Levant, exhibited a distinctive blend of Roman and local traditions. The Hellenistic influence was prevalent, leading to a unique archival style that often included the use of wax tablets for temporary records. This practice created a dual system of record-keeping, where permanent scrolls coexisted alongside ephemeral wax documents, a reflection of the diverse administrative needs in these bustling trade hubs. Part 10: Evolution over different time periods. The evolution of scroll archive organization procedures and papyrus quality control regulations can be traced through several critical periods of Roman history, each marked by unique challenges and innovations. The early Republic, circa 509 to 27 BCE, was characterized by rudimentary methods of documentation, primarily due to the limited bureaucratic structure. During this time, the Senate relied heavily on oral traditions and rudimentary record-keeping practices, often recording decisions and decrees on wax tablets that were frequently lost or damaged. As Rome transitioned into the imperial period, 27 BCE, 476 CE, there was a significant shift towards formalized documentation procedures. The establishment of the cursus publicus, the state-run courier service, facilitated the rapid dissemination of information across the empire, thus necessitating a more organized and efficient approach to record-keeping. The introduction of a standardized system for scrolls, notably the tabulae serrati, marked a pivotal moment in the history of documentation. These wax tablets allowed for more flexible record-keeping, which could be easily erased and reused, thus alleviating some of the burdens of archival maintenance. In the late Empire, circa 284 to 476 CE, the increased complexity of governance led to the establishment of more stringent regulations regarding papyrus quality control. By this time, the Senate had recognized the importance of preserving historical documents for future generations, leading to the enactment of laws mandating the use of high-quality papyrus sourced from Egypt. These regulations were often enforced through a series of inspections conducted by appointed officials, who were tasked with ensuring compliance across various provincial archives. Part 11: Bureaucratic Regulations and Laws. The bureaucratic regulations and laws governing scroll archive organization procedures and papyrus quality control were intricate and multifaceted, reflecting the complexities of Roman governance. The Lex Papyria, enacted in the early 2nd century BCE, mandated that all official documents be inscribed on papyrus of a specific weight and quality, leading to the establishment of a regulatory framework for the papyrus trade. This law stipulated that only papyrus produced in designated regions of Egypt could be utilized for Senate records, thereby ensuring a uniform standard across the empire. Furthermore, the Senate established a series of decrees known as the Senatus Consultum, which detailed the specific protocols for document preservation. These decrees outlined the responsibilities of archivists, who were required to maintain meticulous records of all incoming and outgoing scrolls, including their condition and location within the archive. The consequences for non-compliance were severe, often resulting in punitive measures against those who failed to adhere to the established regulations. In addition to these regulations, the Roman Senate employed a system of regular audits to ensure compliance with papyrus quality standards. Inspectors known as inspectors papyrorum were appointed to conduct thorough examinations of storage facilities, assessing both the quality of papyrus and the integrity of the archival organization. These inspections often involved a comprehensive inventory of scrolls, which required archivists to maintain detailed records of the provenance and condition of each document. Part 12. Supply Chain and Logistics. The supply chain and logistics involved in the procurement of quality papyrus were intricate and required a concerted effort from multiple stakeholders within the empire. The primary source of papyrus was the fertile Nile Delta, where papyrus plants thrived in abundance. The Senate established a network of trade routes to facilitate the importation of papyrus from Egypt, utilizing both land and maritime transport to ensure a steady supply. The papyrus trade was overseen by a cadre of merchants known as mercators papyrorum, who were responsible for sourcing high-quality papyrus from local producers. These merchants operated under the auspices of the Senate, adhering to strict regulations regarding the quality and pricing of papyrus. Contracts were often formalized through the use of written agreements, which included detailed descriptions of the papyrus quality, weight, and delivery timelines. The Senate employed a system of tariffs to regulate the pricing of imported papyrus, thereby ensuring that the costs remained manageable for provincial archives. Moreover, the logistics of transporting papyrus involved considerable planning, as the delicate nature of the material necessitated careful handling. Papyrus was typically bundled and wrapped in linen for protection during transit, with additional measures taken to shield it from moisture. The Senate mandated that all shipments of papyrus be accompanied by a certification document detailing the quality and origin of the materials. These certifications were crucial in maintaining the integrity of the supply chain, as they provided an additional layer of accountability for merchants and suppliers. Part 13. Record-keeping methods. The methods employed for record-keeping within the Roman Senate archives were diverse and evolved significantly over time. The earliest forms of record-keeping, as previously mentioned, relied heavily on wax tablets, which were practical for temporary records but lacked the durability required for long-term preservation. As the need for more permanent documentation grew, the transition to papyrus and later parchment became inevitable. The organization of scrolls within the archives followed a systematic approach based on subject matter and chronological order. Scrolls were often labeled with titles inscribed in ink, which indicated their contents, date of creation, and the name of the author, if applicable. The Senate implemented a color-coding system for different categories of documents, allowing for easier retrieval by archivists and senators alike. For instance, blue ink was often reserved for legal documents, while red ink denoted correspondence and reports. The introduction of a cataloging system further enhanced the effectiveness of record-keeping. Archivists were tasked with maintaining a liber archivarum, a comprehensive register that documented the details of each scroll, including its location, condition, and any pertinent notes regarding its content. This register was regularly updated to reflect changes in the archive, ensuring that senators had access to the most current information. In addition to these practices, the Senate often employed scribes tasked with transcribing important decisions and decrees onto papyrus scrolls to ensure their longevity. These scribes, known as scribi, were highly trained individuals who adhered to strict standards of calligraphy and ink quality. The ink was typically made from a mixture of carbon black and gum arabic, providing a durable and legible writing medium. In conclusion, the history of scroll archive organization procedures and papyrus quality control regulations within the Roman Senate is a complex tapestry woven from regional variations, evolving practices, and meticulous bureaucratic regulations. From the early days of wax tablets to the sophisticated systems of scroll management, the Roman Senate exemplified an enduring commitment to preserving the written word. Such painstaking attention to detail, while seemingly mundane, offers invaluable insights into the administrative practices of one of history's most influential civilizations. The uneventful history of Roman Senate scroll archive organization procedures and papyrus quality control regulations continues to unfold, revealing a tapestry woven with nuanced details that might be perceived as trivial, yet are of profound significance when viewed through the lens of historical documentation practices. In the realms of regional variations and comparisons, we find that the Roman Senate's archival methodologies were not monolithic. They were, in fact, subject to the idiosyncrasies and local customs of the various provinces under Roman governance. Regional variations and comparisons. In the provinces of Hispania, for instance, the papyrus employed was often of inferior quality compared to that used in the heart of Rome. The Iberian artisans had a proclivity for utilizing locally sourced materials, which, while economical, often resulted in scrolls that were prone to rapid degradation. The dry, arid climate of the region, however, did afford some natural preservation, leading to a unique phenomenon where such scrolls could endure longer than their counterparts crafted in more humid locales, such as Gaul. In Gaul, the preference for vellum over papyrus became apparent due to the prevailing dampness, which rendered papyrus more susceptible to mold and decay. This regional divergence led to a fascinating cross-comparison of archival practices, wherein the Senate had to adapt its quality control protocols to account for the variances in material longevity and the environmental factors affecting each province. Thus, while the overarching principles of archiving were standardized at the heart of Rome, the implementation of these principles varied significantly based on local resources and climatic conditions. In the eastern provinces, particularly in Egypt, where papyrus production was at its zenith, the Senate maintained a rigorous system of quality control. Scrolls were graded meticulously by scribes who conducted tests on the texture and thickness of the papyrus, ensuring that only the finest specimens reached the archives in Rome. This resulted in a notable disparity in the quality of documentation, with Egyptian scrolls often heralded as the gold standard, thus creating a hierarchical structure within the archival system based on geographic provenance. Evolution over different time periods. The evolution of the procedures governing the organization of the Senate archives can be traced through various phases of Roman history, each characterized by distinct bureaucratic developments. In the earlier Republic period, the archives were managed with a relatively laissez-faire attitude. Senators often participated in the organization and maintenance of records, leading to a patchwork of methods that varied from one senator's estate to another. The lack of formalized regulations resulted in a chaotic system where important documents could easily be lost or misfiled amidst the plethora of less significant records. As the power of the Senate waned and the empire expanded, a more structured approach emerged. The establishment of the position of archivist, archivarius, during the late Republic marked a significant turning point. This role was formalized further during the reign of Augustus, who instituted a series of reforms to ensure that the growing body of records was managed with greater efficiency. The archivist was tasked with the responsibility of not only organizing but also safeguarding the integrity of the scrolls, which led to the development of more sophisticated filing systems. The introduction of categorization based on thematic relevance, such as military affairs, financial records, and legal decrees, laid the groundwork for modern archival theory. With the transition into the imperial period, a further evolution occurred. The advent of the bureaucratic state necessitated the establishment of comprehensive regulations governing the handling of documents. Detailed laws were enacted, dictating the methods of record retention, the preservation of scrolls, and the protocols for dissemination. The Codex Theodosianus later encapsulated many of these regulations, providing a legal framework that underscored the importance of meticulous record-keeping as a means of governance. Bureaucratic regulations and laws. The bureaucratic regulations surrounding the Roman Senate's archival practices were extensive and, at times, convoluted. The Lex Iurnitana, a prominent legal text from the provinces, outlines various statutes pertinent to the preservation of records. For example, it mandated that all important resolutions passed by the Senate be inscribed on a stable medium, thereby emphasizing the quality of the materials used. The use of inferior papyrus was expressly forbidden for documents of state significance, as such records were deemed too critical to risk degradation. Moreover, the laws stipulated that scrolls should be stored in specific locations within the curia, where temperature and humidity were monitored to prevent deterioration. The meticulousness of these regulations extended to the labeling of scrolls, which required not just the title of the document but also the names of the senators involved, the date of creation, and a brief summary of the content. This level of detail, while seemingly excessive, was intended to facilitate retrieval and cross-referencing in an era where the sheer volume of documentation was burgeoning. The Senate also instituted a review process wherein scrolls were periodically audited to assess their condition. This measure was particularly important considering the rampant issues of misfiling and unauthorized alterations that could arise in such a vast bureaucratic structure. The penalties for noncompliance ranged from fines to public reprimands, reinforcing the seriousness with which the Senate approached its archival responsibilities. Supply chain and logistics. The logistics of procuring papyrus and maintaining a steady supply chain were integral to the efficacy of the Senate's archival operations. The Roman Empire's extensive trade networks facilitated the importation of high-quality papyrus from Egypt, which was considered the premier source of this writing medium. The Senate established contracts with suppliers, ensuring a consistent influx of materials necessary for the production of scrolls. However, this supply chain was not without its challenges. Political instability in Egypt at various points in history often disrupted the flow of papyrus, leading to shortages that necessitated the exploration of alternative materials. In such cases, the Senate would turn to local vellum producers in Gaul or even experiment with less conventional materials, such as wax tablets, which, while not suitable for long-term archival storage, provided temporary solutions for urgent documentation needs. The logistics of transporting papyrus from the ports of Alexandria to the Senate's archives in Rome were equally complex. The Senate maintained a fleet of ships that were tasked specifically with the transport of archival materials. These vessels were equipped with specialized storage compartments designed to protect the scrolls from moisture and physical damage during transit. The records of these shipments were meticulously maintained, detailing the quantities, qualities, and dates of arrival, contributing to the overall accountability of the Senate's archival practices. Record-keeping methods. The record-keeping methods employed by the Senate evolved in tandem with advancements in technology and changing bureaucratic needs. Initially, records were kept in the form of scrolls, which were rolled and stored in wooden cabinets. The challenge of retrieving specific documents from these scrolls necessitated the development of indexing systems, which were rudimentary at first but gradually became more sophisticated. During the late Republic, the introduction of wax tablets for ephemeral records provided an innovative solution. These tablets allowed for temporary writing, which could easily be erased and reused. However, they were not suitable for permanent documentation, thus reinforcing the need for scrolls in long-term archival practices. The advent of the codex form, a significant innovation that replaced the scroll in many contexts, offered yet another evolution in record-keeping. The codex, composed of bound leaves, allowed for easier access to information and facilitated cross-referencing, ultimately leading to a more efficient archival system. The Senate began transitioning to this format for certain types of documentation, particularly legal texts and decrees that required frequent consultation. In conclusion, the history of the Roman Senate scroll archive organization procedures and papyrus quality control regulations is a deeply layered narrative reflecting the complexities of governance, regional variances, bureaucratic evolution, supply chain intricacies, and record-keeping methodologies. Each aspect, while appearing mundane on the surface, contributes significantly to our understanding of how the Romans approached the monumental task of documenting their administrative legacy. The meticulous attention to detail in both the creation and preservation of records underscores the importance placed on continuity, transparency, and accountability within one of history's most formidable institutions. The Roman Senate, a cornerstone of governance in ancient Rome, operated with a complexity that extended beyond politics into the realm of documentation and record-keeping. This aspect, the organization of the Senate Scroll Archive and the regulations surrounding the quality control of papyrus, is often overshadowed by more prominent historical narratives but deserves meticulous examination. The procedures established for the management of scrolls, the roles of lesser-known figures, and the regulations governing the quality of papyrus were essential to maintaining the integrity and continuity of Roman governance. #minor historical figures and their roles. To understand the broader context of the Roman Senate's organizational procedures, it is crucial to recognize the roles played by minor historical figures who were integral to the functioning of the Senate's archival processes. One such figure was the Archivarius Senatus, a title held by various individuals throughout Roman history. This position, often overlooked, was responsible for the categorization, preservation, and accessibility of Senate scrolls. The archivarius was not merely a custodian, he was a pivotal player in ensuring the scrolls were preserved in optimal conditions, which included monitoring humidity levels and protecting against vermin. For instance, in the late Republic, during the tumultuous years leading up to the fall of the Republic, a particular archivarius named Lucius Varro is documented to have implemented a new system of categorization based on subject matter, a radical departure from the previous chronological organization. His methods, although met with resistance from traditionalists, eventually gained acceptance and set a precedent for future archival practices. Varro's contributions were critical in streamlining the retrieval of documents pertinent to ongoing political discussions, and his legacy is often cited in later treatises on archival science. Another figure of interest is the censor, a magistrate tasked with maintaining the moral integrity of the Roman populace but also involved in overseeing the quality of public records, including Senate scrolls. The censor's role in quality control extended to ensuring that the materials used for documentation met certain standards. This oversight was vital, as the state relied heavily on the accuracy of its records for legal and administrative purposes. The censor's authority included the ability to penalize officials who failed to adhere to the prescribed standards of record keeping. #specific case studies with dates. A notable case study that exemplifies the intricacies of scroll archive organization occurred in 63 BCE, during the consulship of Cicero. This year is significant not only for Cicero's political maneuvers against Catiline but also for the subsequent documentation of these events. Following the revelation of the Catilinarian conspiracy, the Senate convened to deliberate on the matter and issued a series of decrees. The scrolls documenting the debates and decisions made during this critical juncture were meticulously archived under the supervision of the then archivarius, a man named Gaius Octavius. Octavius implemented a dual-entry system for documenting the proceedings, where both a summary and a detailed account of the debates were inscribed on separate scrolls. This decision was motivated by the desire to produce a reliable historical record while allowing for easy reference by future senators. The scrolls remained a point of reference for decades, serving as a primary source for later historians such as Sallust and Tacitus, who relied on these records to craft their narratives of the late Republic. In 27 BCE, during the establishment of the Principate under Augustus, a significant reorganization of the Senate's archival practices took place. Augustus, recognizing the importance of a well-maintained archive for legitimacy and continuity, commissioned a complete inventory of existing scrolls. This inventory was conducted under the supervision of the newly appointed Curator Bibliothecae Senatus, a position created specifically for this purpose. The results of this inventory revealed that many scrolls had suffered from neglect, with some being illegible due to deterioration. Augustus mandated a strict set of regulations for the preservation of these documents, which included periodic inspections and the establishment of a controlled environment for the scrolls. #comparative analysis with other regions. Comparatively, the methods employed by the Roman Senate in organizing their scroll archives can be contrasted with those of contemporary civilizations, such as the Athenian assembly and the administrative practices of the Persian Empire. In Athens, while the assembly was known for its more democratic approach to governance, the organization of its records was less formalized than that of the Roman Senate. Athenian records tended to be more ephemeral, with less emphasis on long-term preservation. This lack of a rigorous archival system often led to disputes over the accuracy of historical accounts, particularly in the context of political trials and ostracisms. In stark contrast, the Persian Empire, particularly under Darius I, implemented a highly centralized and bureaucratic system of record-keeping. The Achaemenid Persians utilized an intricate network of satraps, provincial governors, who were responsible for maintaining local records. These records were often inscribed on clay tablets rather than scrolls, reflecting a different material culture. The Persian emphasis on maintaining detailed accounts for tax collection and administrative purposes mirrored, to some extent, Roman practices. However, the Romans excelled in the art of preserving scrolls for historical documentation, leading to a wealth of primary sources that would inform future generations. #Archaeological findings and interpretations. Archaeological discoveries have illuminated various aspects of the Roman Senate's archival practices. The excavation of the Tabularium, the state archive of Rome located at the foot of the Capitoline Hill, has revealed much about the physical organization of Senate records. Built in 78 BCE, the Tabularium housed countless scrolls and provided a secure environment for their preservation. The architecture of the Tabularium itself, with its imposing facade and robust storage rooms, reflects the importance placed on safeguarding these critical documents. In 1937, a cache of papyrus scrolls was unearthed in the ruins of a villa in Herculaneum, a site buried by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE. Among these scrolls were several that contained legislative texts and senatorial decrees, providing direct insight into the procedural language and bureaucratic practices of the Senate. The scrolls were carbonized and fragile, yet scholars have worked diligently to reconstruct their contents using advanced imaging techniques. One particularly fascinating scroll, dated to 45 BCE, contained discussions related to the reforms proposed by Julius Caesar. Archaeologists noted that the ink used in these scrolls was of high quality, leading to a hypothesis that the papyrus used was sourced from Alexandria, known for producing superior quality writing materials. This finding underscores the importance of papyrus quality control, as the choice of material significantly influenced the longevity and legibility of documents. Primary source quotations, invented but plausible. To further contextualize the significance of the Senate's archival practices, one might consider the following invented quotations that could plausibly emerge from the writings of Roman officials. 1. In the accurate recording of our debates, we lay the foundations of our republic's memory. Let no scroll suffer neglect lest our voices be silenced by time. Gaius Octavius, Archivarius Senatus, 63 BCE. 2. The papyrus we employ must be as enduring as the decisions we render, for the fate of Rome rests upon the permanence of our words. Lucius Varro, Archivarius Senatus, 45 BCE. 3. As censor, I decree that our records be maintained with utmost diligence. The integrity of our Senate is reflected in the quality of our scrolls. C. Licinius Crassus, Censor, 27 BCE. 4. Let it be known that the preservation of our scrolls is not merely an act of record-keeping, but a testament to our legacy as a Senate. Aulus Hirtius, Curator Bibliothecae Senatus, 20 BCE. These fictional quotations encapsulate the reverence that Roman officials held for their archival practices and a profound understanding of their significance to the continuity of the Republic. The meticulous organization of records was not merely a bureaucratic necessity, it was viewed as a civic duty owed to future generations. #Conclusion. In conclusion, the procedures surrounding the organization of the Roman Senate Scroll Archive and the regulations for papyrus quality control illustrate the remarkable complexity of Roman governance. The roles of minor historical figures, pivotal case studies, comparative analyses with other civilizations, archaeological findings, and plausible primary source quotations collectively paint a detailed picture of a society deeply invested in the preservation of its history. This commitment to documentation and quality control reflects a broader understanding of the importance of historical memory, a value that resonates through the ages and continues to inform modern archival practices. Thus, while the intricacies of these procedures may seem tedious, they encapsulate a vital chapter in the annals of Roman history, deserving of our attention and respect. The history of the Roman Senate Scroll Archive organization procedures and papyrus quality control regulations is a subject that, while seemingly niche, provides a fascinating lens through which to examine the bureaucratic practices of ancient Rome. The intricacies of these procedures and regulations offer a wealth of detail that can indeed induce a state of drowsiness in the reader. To begin with, one must consider the minor historical figures who played pivotal roles in the evolution of the Senate's archival practices. While figures like Cicero and Julius Caesar often dominate discussions of Roman history, it was lesser-known individuals such as Lucius Licinius Murena and Gaius Gracchus who contributed significantly to the development of the scroll archive. Lucius Licinius Murena, a senator in the late Republic, is often overlooked in historical texts. Murena was instrumental in the establishment of the first formalized procedures for the categorization of scrolls within the Senate archives around 70 BCE. His contributions were not merely functional, they were also philosophical, as Murena believed that the organization of knowledge was essential for the continuity of the Republic. He proposed a system in which scrolls were categorized not only by subject matter but also by the political implications of their content. This allowed future senators to navigate the archives with greater ease, although it also led to considerable debates regarding the subjective nature of political relevance. On the other hand, Gaius Gracchus, known primarily for his populist reforms, also had a significant but understated influence on the physical characteristics of the papyri used in Senate documentation. During his tenure in the late 2nd century BCE, Gracchus advocated for the use of higher quality papyrus sourced from the Nile Delta, which was known for its durability and smooth texture. This shift was crucial, as it ensured that documents could withstand the test of time, thereby facilitating the preservation of the Senate's legislative history. His insistence on quality control led to the establishment of the first documented set of papyrus quality regulations, which mandated that all scrolls used in the archives must meet certain criteria regarding thickness, color, and texture. The procedures for archiving Senate scrolls were further refined throughout the Republican period. By 44 BCE, during the time of Julius Caesar, the archiving process had evolved into a more structured system that included a series of steps designed to ensure both the integrity of the documents and the ease of access for future senators. The first step in this process involved the careful cataloging of each scroll upon its arrival at the Senate archives. This involved a detailed entry in a ledger, noting the title, the author, the date of creation, and a brief summary of the content. The ledger itself was an essential component of the archival process. It served as a master list that senators could consult to determine which scrolls were available for review. Following cataloging, the scrolls were subjected to quality control inspections. Inspectors, often chosen from among the more senior senators due to their experience and knowledge, would examine each scroll for any signs of damage, such as tears, ink fading, or degradation of the papyrus itself. An interesting case study that exemplifies this process occurred in 27 BCE, when a significant number of scrolls authored by the philosopher Seneca were discovered to be suffering from ink fading due to the poor quality of ink used at the time. This prompted a Senate inquiry that ultimately led to the establishment of standardized ink formulations, which were to be used exclusively for all official documentation henceforth. In addition to the physical inspections of the scrolls, the regulatory framework also mandated the implementation of environmental controls within the archive storage rooms. These controls included maintaining a stable temperature and humidity level to prevent mold growth and deterioration of the papyrus. The regulations specified that the ideal conditions for scroll storage required a temperature of no more than 20 degrees Celsius and a humidity level not exceeding 50%. The Senate appointed a dedicated team of archivists responsible for monitoring these conditions, as well as for conducting regular audits to ensure compliance. As the Republic transitioned into the Empire, the Senate's archival procedures became even more elaborate. By the time of Emperor Augustus, a comprehensive organization system was firmly in place. It was during this time that the concept of thematic organization emerged, allowing for the categorization of scrolls not only by author or date but also by specific themes related to governance, military affairs, and philosophical discourse. This thematic organization was particularly beneficial during times of political turmoil, as it provided senators with quick access to documents that could inform their decision-making processes. For example, during the Social Wars, 91 to 88 BCE, senators relied heavily on archived scrolls that dealt with military strategies and diplomatic correspondence, facilitating a more informed legislative response to the crisis. To illustrate the bureaucratic nature of the Senate's archival procedures, consider the hypothetical testimony of a fictional minor archivist, Marcus Tullius Scribanius, who might have remarked, "It is through the meticulous cataloging and safeguarding of our scrolls that we preserve the very essence of our republic's governance." Each scroll is not merely a document, it is a testament to the trials and tribulations of our great nation. Such sentiments reflect the reverence with which archivists viewed their roles in supporting the machinery of state. The Senate's archival practices can also be compared to those of other contemporary civilizations. For instance, the bureaucratic systems of ancient Egypt employed a similar emphasis on record-keeping, albeit with a slightly different focus. While the Roman Senate prioritized political discourse and legislative history, Egyptian scribes were more concerned with maintaining records related to agriculture, taxation, and religious observances. This divergence in priorities is indicative of the underlying cultural values that shaped each civilization's approach to documentation. In Egypt, papyrus was often produced in bulk and utilized for a diverse array of purposes, including administrative records and literary works. The quality control measures in place were somewhat less rigorous than those established by the Roman Senate, primarily due to the different socio-political contexts. Egyptian archivists prioritized expediency over longevity, leading to a more utilitarian approach to papyrus quality. Archaeological findings from sites such as Herculaneum and Pompeii have further illuminated the Roman approach to archival practices. Excavations of the Villa of the Papyri at Herculaneum revealed a wealth of scrolls that were carbonized during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE. These scrolls, while damaged beyond immediate readability, have provided invaluable insights into the quality of papyrus used in the Roman Empire and the extent of literary and philosophical thought at the time. The study of these scrolls has led to the interpretation that Roman scribes employed various techniques to enhance the readability of their documents, such as the use of larger script and spacing to accommodate the limitations of the papyrus itself. This is evidenced by the careful analysis of the remaining fragments, which reveal an unexpected level of sophistication in the production of scrolls. In conclusion, the uneventful history of Roman Senate scroll archive organization procedures and papyrus quality control regulations presents a complex tapestry of minor historical figures, case studies, comparative analyses, and archaeological findings, all of which contribute to our understanding of ancient bureaucratic practices. From the contributions of senators like Lucius Licinius Murena and Gaius Gracchus to the meticulous procedures enacted by the Senate, each detail adds a layer of depth to this seemingly mundane topic. As one reflects upon the importance of such archival practices, one cannot help but appreciate the dedication of those who labored in the shadows of history to ensure that the records of their time would endure for future generations. The legacy of these procedures, while perhaps not as thrilling as the military conquests of their contemporaries, nonetheless forms the backbone of our understanding of Roman governance and societal structure. Thus, as we delve into the minutiae of the Roman Senate's archival practices, we uncover a world rich in detail, where even the most mundane aspects of governance reveal a dedication to knowledge preservation that transcends time and continues to resonate in contemporary practices. In final reflection, let us not forget the potential for boredom inherent in the details of such historical practices. The intricate organization of scrolls and the stringent quality control measures may seem dull to the modern reader, but they serve as a reminder of the importance of documentation and the preservation of knowledge in any civilization. Indeed, the exhaustive details surrounding the Roman Senate scroll archive organization procedures and papyrus quality control regulations may induce sleep, but it also invites us to appreciate the quiet diligence of those who, in their work, sought to ensure that the annals of history would not be lost to time. And so, dear listeners, we come to the end of our tranquil journey through the quiet corridors of history, where we explored the uneventful yet fascinating tale of the Roman Senate scroll archive organization procedures and the meticulous papyrus quality control regulations. As we drifted through the ages, We unearthed the painstaking efforts of those ancient archivists who dedicated their lives to ensuring that the wisdom of the Senate was preserved for generations to come. Their commitment to quality and organization reminds us of the importance of order and care in our own lives. We meandered through the intricate processes that govern the handling of fragile scrolls, the careful selection of papyrus, and the methodical record-keeping that would maintain the integrity of the Senate's documentation. Each scroll, each regulation, stood as a testament to the human dedication to knowledge and the preservation of history. The echoes of scribes' pens gently gliding across papyrus can almost be felt, as we reflect on the quiet diligence that shaped the foundation of Roman governance and, by extension, our own societal frameworks today. As we draw our exploration to a close, I want to take a moment to thank you for accompanying me on this serene voyage. Your willingness to engage with the subtle nuances of history is a gentle reminder that even the most uneventful topics can hold a wealth of soothing stories, waiting to be uncovered. In this fast-paced world, it is in these quiet moments of reflection that we find solace, and I hope that you have felt this peace wash over you during our time together. Now, as you prepare to drift off into the restful embrace of slumber, I invite you to carry with you the calmness of our shared journey. May the whispers of the past lull you into a deep, restful sleep, where dreams are filled with the wisdom of ages long gone. Should you wish to revisit this serene exploration, remember that you can replay this gentle narrative whenever you desire, inviting the soothing cadence of history to guide you once more. So, dear listener, close your eyes and breathe deeply, allowing the tranquility to envelop you. May your dreams be light and filled with the comforting knowledge that you are part of a vast tapestry of time. As you settle in for the night, I wish you peace, serenity, and the sweetest of dreams. Good night, dear friends. May you awaken refreshed and ready to embrace the new day that awaits you.